Library, the recovery of the real sky in Nineveh. What if I told you that the astrology you know today may have nothing to do with the real sky? What if, instead of modern interpretations, there existed a physical, concrete record engraved in clay more than 2,700 years ago, showing exactly how the sky was observed? This is not theory, nor opinion. It is preserved history. When we talk about astrology, it is common to imagine something abstract, symbolic, or even subjective. But the origin of all this is the opposite. Astrology was born from direct observation of the sky, precise, patient, repeated for centuries. And to understand why here at Sidereal Way we talk so much about the real sky, we need to go back in time, to ancient Mesopotamia, more specifically to Nineveh. Not as a historical curiosity, but as a reunion with the most honest way humanity has ever had of looking at the cosmos. In the territory that is today Iraq, there existed one of the most important cities of antiquity, Nineveh. It was not only a political center, it was a center of knowledge. And it was there that a king changed everything, Ashurbanipal. Unlike other kings, he was not only a warrior, he was a scholar. He could read and write in complex languages such as Sumerian and Akkadian, and he decided to do something unusual for his time, to preserve human knowledge. He sent scribes throughout the empire to collect, copy, and translate texts. The result was more than 25,000 clay tablets with texts on medicine, laws, literature, and especially about the sky. These tablets were found centuries later and today are mostly in the British Museum. But the most important thing is not where they are, it is what they show. The peoples of Mesopotamia did not see the sky as superstition. They treated the sky as a system of knowledge, a science that united astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and symbolic perception. And all of this was recorded in cuneiform writing, made by pressing a wedge-shaped stylus into still wet clay, which was then baked. This is what allowed this knowledge to survive. The truth of the stars was literally engraved in matter. In the Library of Nineveh, astrology was not something superficial. It stood side by side with the foundations of life, because for them, the sky was a mirror of the order of the world. Every planetary movement mattered. Every variation was observed, not only to record, but to understand, to decipher how the invisible manifested in human life. Within this collection, there are two fundamental sets of texts. The first is the Enuma Anu Enlil, a collection of about 70 tablets where priests recorded eclipses, the brightness of stars, and planetary movements. They sought patterns, but not in a mechanical way. They wanted to understand relationships, how certain configurations in the sky were reflected on Earth. It was a continuous attempt to read the language of the cosmos. The second text, perhaps the most important, is the MUL.APIN, dated to approximately 1000 before Christ, but based on even older traditions. And here is the central point of everything. The MUL.APIN describes the sky exactly as it is seen, based on fixed stars, not on artificial divisions. It lists the constellations that the sun and the moon actually pass through, without simplifying, without adjusting, without fitting the sky into a perfect model. They respected irregularity, the real size of the constellations, the true position of the celestial bodies. And this completely changes the way of understanding astrology, because it shows that the sky was never divided into equal parts. The sky is alive, irregular, and complex, and this is how it was observed for thousands of years. And then an important question arises. And Ophiuchus, the so-called 13th sign? For the Assyrians, this question did not even make sense, because they did not work with signs as we know them today. They observed real constellations, and among these constellations was Ophiuchus, known as Nera, the serpent god. It was not ignored. On the contrary, it was recorded with the same rigor as any other constellation, without exclusion, without adaptation. Ophiuchus was seen as a zone of transition between the human world and the process of regeneration, a symbolic space of transformation. But this changes. In 612 before Christ, Nineveh is destroyed. And here, something curious happens. The fire that destroyed the city saved the knowledge. The heat baked the clay tablets and transformed them into resistant ceramic. What was fragile became permanent. But while the records survived, the way of interpreting the sky began to change. With the rise of the Chaldeans and the Neo-Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar II, a new need emerges to organize, simplify, standardize, and thus is born what we know today as the mathematical zodiac. The ecliptic begins to be divided into 12 equal parts, each with 30 degrees, a practical choice, but not faithful to the real sky. Because to do this, it was necessary to ignore the real dimensions of the constellations, and it was in this process that Ophiuchus was removed. Its space was compressed and distributed between Scorpio and Sagittarius, not because it did not exist, but because it did not fit the model. And here the rupture happens. The real sky is replaced by a geometric system, precise in calculation, but distant from observation. And that is exactly why Nineveh is so important today, because it represents the last moment when the sky was observed without distortions, without simplifications, without forced fittings. When we say that your sign may not be what you have always believed, this is not a new theory. It is a return to the oldest, most direct, and most honest criterion, the criterion of observation. At Sidereal Way, the proposal is not to reinvent astrology, it is to recover it, to use current technology to look at the sky with the same precision that those observers had 2,700 years ago. When you explore this knowledge, you are not only consuming information, you are accessing something that survived the fall of empires, the silence of centuries, and the transformation of civilizations. You are not reading a horoscope. You are reading an ancient code, a code that was not invented. It was observed. And perhaps your journey is not beginning now. Perhaps it is simply returning to the point of origin, to the real sky.
If this topic sparked your curiosity, you can continue this journey with Sidereal Way. There, you'll find the full article behind this video, and you can also discover more about what the real sky reveals about you. The links are in the description. And if you believe this knowledge should reach more people, like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Every week, we'll keep exploring the real sky, its origins, and what it can still reveal. Thank you for watching until the end. In a time when so many things try to reduce us to labels, perhaps becoming interested in the real sky is already a first step towards something greater. To stop trying to fit in and start recognizing who you are.